falls in place after you learn about that and get that down. Everything else just comes into place, and you can see exactly how Satan works, and the lengths he'll go to deceive people. The early Christians, perhaps millions, but for sure, many thousands killed. And once they got rid of the early Christians, they could then create Christianity from the ground up exactly how they wanted it to be, how they wanted it to be believed in 2,000 years from now. And you look at the Council of Nicaea and Constantine, he was nothing but a Mason who had already given his loyalty to Satan, declaring what can be in the Bible and what can't be. Do you really think the Lord would end his Bible on a cultic number of 66? It's many things. But it's for people to learn the truth from by asking him direct, and then he can show them the truth in all things. So I'm not going to go over all of this Athena as Eve stuff, because this whole thing with the Parthenon Code pretty much lays out, folks, everything about Eve and Cain and Satan. And that's one of the things that they don't want you to know about. It's one of the biggest doctrines on the internet that you start talking about that you're going to be attacked about, because they want to hide this whole relationship and this whole serpent seed line that dominates the earth. The Lord said they would be with us always, and that at the end of the age the angels will separate the wheat and the tares. So who are these tares? They're the serpent seed line among us. Not only that, but these even these hybrids among us, half alien, half human, as in the days of Noah, as it was dominant in the days of Noah, hybrid people being born, hybrid children. We have it today with the indigo children, the star children. And I do believe that they can, if they're more so human than hybrid, then they have a soul still. And if they have a soul, they can choose whom they'll follow, Satan or the Lord. I know some of them being taken over. Some of these clones don't have a soul. They're soulless beings, and the Lord, Satan, will use those. Put up a blog yesterday at SherryTalkRadio.blogspot.com about Satan's armies, and about this black army that Satan is going to use. And you see them today; they're dressed in black. They have black uniforms. People have stated that they've seen Russians dressed up in these black uniforms and Germans, and they've talked to them, and they say they're here to prepare to take over. When martial law is implemented here, they'll be used to herd people into these internment camps. People say it can't happen. This is America, and it's not, it's not if but when. They've been building these internment camps since Rex 84 in the 1980s. Oliver North was in charge of it, and they're very much going to be used. And martial law is going to come to America. It's the only way that when Maitreya comes, and I've said repeatedly on the show, I do believe that this Maitreya is Cain, some kind of incarnation of Cain, if not Cain himself, comes as the Antichrist, that he will try to get rid of rebellion right away. He's not going to put up with the Christian crowd. He knows the Christian crowd is going to rail up against him. And especially when Jesus comes, the Sananda I've been warning about, when he comes, I believe he's going to play the role of the false prophet. And when you see him going to the churches and telling them that this Maitreya, this Arab, this Islam freak is God, people are going to rail up against that. And so that's why they have all these internment camps. They're going to be ready to begin the war on the saints almost immediately from the time that these Anics make their entrance on the earth, make their arrival here. They're going to be Anik beings, meaning that they're going to be very tall, indicating that they're not purely human, have supernatural power, supernatural strength, going to be able to perform many miracles via witchcraft and illusion. And they're going to deceive a lot of people. They're going to be very good, because even the Christians in the churches today are going to be upset and angry at the Christians who don't accept them as God. And they're going to come after them as well. They're going to come after their own brethren. And so it's going to be a time of great persecution and hatred, and the Lord's true believers are going to have to hide. I do believe for a space, up until the time when he begins his Luciferian initiation into the New World Order, where he makes everyone receive his name, number on their right hand or forehead. I think at that time the Lord will protect and hide his chosen, his people, but not the majority, because the truth is most of the people in the churches today are so sold out to idolatry and apostasies, and there's so much error. He is going to allow them to be refined by this martial law and these death camps. He's going to allow them to be refined by it. And so that's going to be the majority of people. The majority of them are waiting for this mystery rapture to come. That's why they love Paul. Because if you take away Paul, you take away about 99% of the falsehoods that people believe today. And so that's why they hold on to everything he says. Because if you look at all of the apostasies and errors being taught in the churches today, they all quote Paul to back them up. Ask them who gave them the authority to change Sabbaths from Saturday to a Sunday, when the Lord said in the Old Testament that Saturday on the seventh day was an eternal sign between him and his people. An eternal sign means it doesn't end at the church age, folks. It was an eternal sign. Who gave them the authority to change the Sabbath? They'll quote Paul. They always quote Paul to back up their apostasies and errors. And so if you take out Paul and you just start reading what the Lord has to say, the words in red, you get a whole, it becomes quite clear when Paul states that he was teaching a different gospel that he was. He was teaching Satan's, he wasn't teaching the Lord's. Paul often calls it my gospel, states that he was teaching a different gospel. And the most dangerous thing about Paul, and I find this amusing from people who are supposed to be actually political thinkers, they'll say the most dangerous people of all are the amorality people, the ones who become all things to all people. Well, isn't that what Paul stated? Wasn't that what he supported when he said he becomes all things to all people? He was amorality. He was amoral. So why can they see that about politicians when they say, oh, he's amoral, he's the most dangerous politician there is, because he doesn't stand for anything, he's just all things to all people. And that was basically Paul's whole foundation. He was amoral. He was all things to all people. And of course he throws in just so he can win them to the Lord, and that was a lie. He didn't lead people to the Lord, he led them away from the Lord. Look at the churches today. They no longer celebrate the Lord's appointed times and feasts with his people. And why? Because they'll quote Paul. They'll celebrate Eve and Easter. They'll celebrate Masonic symbolisms and Mithra on Christmas Day. And instead of celebrating the 7 feasts of the year that we're supposed to have with the Lord, they fill them up with man traditions and Satan worship. Because anytime you're worshiping Eve, you're just partaking in Satan worship, because she takes all that worship not only upon herself, but also forwards it to Satan as well, so that there's a full roundup. She's nothing but his queen, leading people into Satan worship. And so that's where I'm going to leave that tonight. I think I'm just going to start answering questions. If you have a question, you can send it to SherryTalkRadio@yahoo.com. Some people, do you believe it is possible that life is only a dream state, an illusion, or a computer simulation, and we are trapped in the Matrix? No, obviously not. I mean, how are you going to stand in judgment at the throne of God? Now, if all this is an illusion, then you can just wake up at that point, right? You don't have to be accountable for the way you spent or wasted your life, or be rewarded for the good things that you did. That kind of just works in David Icke's whole thing about where he's completely agnostic, but he's completely hypocritical, because he says he doesn't believe in Yeshua, the Son of God, but then when he was in Europe, he claimed he was the Messiah. He was a laughing stock of Europe because he claimed he was the Messiah. And then when he came over here, he claimed that the Messiah didn't exist.